I'd like to call the work session to order for June 13, 2022. Will the clerk please read the roll call?
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
We have two items on the agenda tonight. I'd like to remind council that staff will be pausing intermediately to answer any questions. Please, first item tonight is the overview of the Community Response Vehicle Program. Go ahead, Chief, introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paul Louisi, Interim Deputy City Manager. So tonight, we've come to you, and this is a promise check-in. So from when we first had our conversations last May with regards to the budget and the funding of this team. So tonight we'll give you an update on the community response team. We actually have a short video that the city was able to produce a short time ago, so it kind of gives a good overview of the program. We'll do an introduction of the team, a program update, some data review, and then obviously we'll be available for any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and run the video for us.
When people call 911 for help, the fire department, police department show up and help however we can. But one of the things that we often don't think about is the families that are left behind. That's really the goal of the community response team, is to ensure that we're providing the support that the families need in those situations.
The beautiful thing about having this program is they know that we're there to provide emotional support that maybe the firefighters or the police officers are not able to do because they have their own roles and their own jobs that they have to accomplish. We are there for them specifically.
This program, along with the community paramedicine program, ensures we're providing that crucial assistance for Goodyear residents when they need it most. The effect has been immediate and it's been very positive. I think that just really ties all the things together here and what the services we provide through the police department and fire department.
Being able to help those people when they're having a crisis, we can at least sit down with them, hopefully de-escalate the situation and get them to the appropriate resources. We've stayed on scene for up to 4 hours on a call, just helping the family work through the process and making sure that they were taken care of.
It's reflective of what the city does as a whole. Mayor and council have always been very supportive of our efforts to provide the highest level of service to our citizens. This is a very exciting endeavor that we're taking on, and we feel like this provides another level of support for them.
So a big shout out to our communications team helping us produce that video. So tonight I'd like to introduce the team. So
Douglas County is beautiful.
It's been one of the fastest growing counties in the country for years.
A place to raise our kids, to work, and to enjoy life.
There we go. Sorry. Yeah, thanks, Ali. I'd like to introduce Sandra Espinoza, who's our crisis response coordinator. So she's sitting to my left up here and will be helping me with the presentation tonight. So she's actually a Goodyear resident, so we're really fortunate to be able to steal her from another city, but lots of experience with behavioral health and also as a victim's advocate. And then most of you know our other team member on this team is firefighter paramedic Joe Hernandez, who's a 20-year fire employee and also one of our community paramedics. So he and Sandra make up the community response team. And then also in the audience tonight is Detective Hawkins Band. So he has been a great supporter of our program from the police side as we've made inroads with the police department and worked in collaboration with that team as well. So tonight we'll talk about the multi-tiered approach that is the community response team. So they do provide immediate crisis intervention and on-scene victim assistance. They provide behavioral health resources and referrals for clients. They also are providing community paramedicine to our citizens, and they help facilitate communication between the clients and the fire and the police departments. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what we do is we take care of people. Oops, sorry. So the first day of service was November 15th, 2021. So we actually hired Sandra in August, and then she worked putting the policies together, We brought Joey in shortly after that, and they began working as a team, developing the policies, getting the training done, going out and meeting with the police and the fire departments members, as well as the dispatch teams, to really get a good understanding of how this team would work. Currently, they're working 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And if you just look at our overall calls from a breakdown perspective, about 87% of the calls are crisis response calls, and then about 13% right now are community paramedicine calls. So since November, so this is through the end of May, we've had 501 calls that are classified as crisis response calls or community response team calls. What you see up there is the aggregate. So of the total pie, 501 of those calls makes up the 100% there. So far, we've been able to get to about 33% of those calls, whether it's because we're in service or the 67% is because we're not in service. But we do want to continue to evaluate this data over the rest of the year. And obviously, we feel like our ability to get to more calls is going to improve. But if you remember back last May when we talked about predicted call volume, total call volume, I had predicted about 720 calls. So right now we're on track, if you trend out this for the entire year, about 860 calls right now. So we're a little bit over what we predicted. Now, of the 33% that you just had previously seen, 85% of those calls are being handled by the Community Response Team 181. The other teams that you see up there is the CR 301, that's Surprises Unit. So they're handling about 10% of the calls. And Crisis Response 155 is the Glendale unit, so about 2% of the calls. So again, this is when the unit is not available. The automatic aid system is reacting to the need for a crisis response unit, and so they're sending either in a Surprise or Glendale. And Glendale did just recently change their response criteria, and they're staying only in Glendale now. So really the only other unit that could respond into our city would be Surprise. And so those are about 163 calls, and that again was till the end of May. Now I'll turn it over to Sandra now to talk about the different types of calls.
Thank you, Chief. So the majority of our calls, we split them up into 3 different types. Sorry. Is that better? I'll project. So high stress incidents, which include any type of death call, assaults where PD is involved. That includes domestic violence calls, any type of car accident with extrication where there may be victims that need assistance. So those are the high stress incidents. Behavioral health calls are anywhere where PD or fire is needing us. Maybe somebody's experiencing an anxiety attack, or they have ongoing behavioral health issues where they need us to provide additional support on scene. And then 13% of those calls are community paramedicine. Those are calls that we schedule on our own, and those are for the members of the community that have been referred to our community paramedicine program. We will schedule those throughout the week, and right now those are about 13% of our calls. Of those Of those high stress incidents, about 29 of them have been deaths. That could be anywhere from a natural death or unintentional overdose. So those calls are the highest volume of calls that we get. Even if the family is prepared for the loss of their loved one, sometimes they're not emotionally prepared for it, and that's why we are able to be on scene. In the video, you saw that we sometimes are on scene 4 to 5 hours, and that's pretty common for death investigations where PD is involved. Imagine being on scene for 4 hours and the family is just waiting for answers. So it's nice for us to be able to be there for them. Okay. So every call receives a service, and the way that we divide it is by the ones you see up there: behavioral, educational, emotional support, nutrition, safety, and transportation. That is the service that we provide. On top of that, we provide resources. And those can vary from any type of resource in the community, whether it's Phoenix Rescue Mission, behavioral health resources, food boxes. We track all of that information, But even if we're on scene and the individual didn't need any resources, we still provide a service while we are on scene, and these are the services that we are categorizing right now. And about 139 resources have been given out.
So last year, during the budget process, we did propose some data metrics for council to consider. And so as we started to track the unit and their progress throughout the last 7 months, some of the metrics that I wanted to report back to you guys, the average time on scene, our goal was about an hour and 30 minutes. And in reality, it's about an hour and 50 minutes. So it's good. I mean, we certainly know that these calls are not quick turnarounds. They are something that we're spending a lot more time with the families on scene to ensure they have all the appropriate resources. This one I thought was really important was the average time for the first unit to be back in service. So whether it's a fire or police department resource that's being sent to the call, the crisis team is able to stay there and then put that unit back into service. So those critical resources are going back into service. Our goal was 45 minutes, and I'm happy to report that right now, about 31 minutes, we can get an emergent unit back into service, so a lot more quickly. This next data point has been very difficult for us to track. I thought we would be able to track this one a little bit easier, but because there's so many different nuances to this type of data metric, it's been a little bit of an elusive one for us. So we are out researching right now nationally what other units are tracking for a similar type of data metric, trying to reduce the number of fire or police units dispatched to behavioral health calls. So we continue to look for that, but we'll also try to find ways to look at the data to be able to report that out a little bit more accurately. Another one, reduce the frequent users of the 911 system for non-emergent needs. This is more of a community paramedicine data metric. So our goal was 40%, and it actually is 59% right now. Along the same trend lines that we've seen previously with community paramedicine being able to reduce the use of the 911 system by getting them into the most appropriate resource has really shown to be beneficial here. And then contact. So when we identify that this is a community paramedicine patient, being able to go out and contact that patient within 48 hours, and we are meeting that goal. Right now, as we look at the other data metrics, ironically enough, our busiest day of the week continues to be Tuesday going into this. So we've, on average, about 36 calls that happen just on Tuesdays. And then our busiest hour of the day tends to be 11 a.m. for whatever reason. So it is kind of really interesting as you start to kind of pull apart that data and look at those pieces. We wanted to provide some of the feedback that we've been getting, and this certainly I think speaks to some of the work that Joey and Sandra have been doing. This actually came from a client and was unsolicited. It was actually posted on our website for the city. But it just really talks about them being so helpful in how much during a difficult time that they knew that they had somebody there to support and guide them and for them and for their family. Do you want to add anything?
Sure. So this call came in right after the community response team went in service. It was during the pandemic. There was so many calls related to COVID, and this was the individual passed away due to COVID. He was the grandfather, he was the provider, and the family was completely in shock. It was unexpected. He was healthy. And having us there, we provided the resources that we felt were appropriate, and the family continued to ask us to stay until he was, until the investigation was completed, or until the medical examiner was there. And many times we told them, if you don't need us here, it's okay. Nope, we want you guys here. You're a huge support. There were 3 little children in the home, and they wanted the support as well. So it was one of those calls where we felt like maybe they didn't need us, but they told us many times that they did. So
And then the next feedback actually came from two of our officers. Officer Mann, obviously, who's here today, and I'm sorry, I don't know why that's overriding on the bottom one. But the top one is from Officer Eckert. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that one, Sandra.
Sure. So this call, we were special requested by PD. There was a gentleman that drove into Arizona from out of state with the intention of committing suicide in the desert. He had a plan, he had an intent. He was a very bright individual. When we got there, Officer Eckert had been speaking with him probably for over an hour. And we took over, we were taking turns, and thankfully, by the end of the situation, he was able to go to the hospital and he was okay with it. It is very hard talking to somebody who has a plan and being able to tag team with the officer, and both of us really work to get this person the services that they need. It was a really good situation.
And then lastly, this came from one of our pretty senior captains, Mario Santos, who's actually also a community paramedic as well. But he just goes on to talk about having the knowledge of the human behaviors during a time of crisis, medical knowledge, fundamental knowledge of the available resources that are out there. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of this program, is just really being able to direct the patients to the correct resources, rather than just our simple answer is taking them to the emergency department. We're trying to find the correct resources to these patients is really what our goal is. So, yeah, obviously we've given you kind of a highlight overview of what's going on, but we still need to continue to evaluate the effectiveness of this program and continue to kind of build on the data sets that we're watching right now, and how they are certainly impacting the community in a very positive way. So we're open for any questions.
Let's start over here on the left. Anything, Councilmember Bray?
Could you scroll back to the
Sure.
calls, the pie chart there? That one.
Oh, sorry.
On that pie chart, obviously the 48%, it comes through the 911 system. There's been an incident, right? So on the 39% behavioral health, is that coming through a 911 system as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So the only thing that's not coming through a 911 system is the community paramedicine program.
Yeah, so there's a little nuance to that one. So in a scenario where an emergency crew does respond to a call and they realize that, through their training, they understand this patient probably needs resources that are not the emergency department. So what they can do is a direct referral or a direct contact to the crisis team. So if they're able to come out and assist right then and there, if not, kind of follow up with them in 24 to 48 hours. So some of those calls come in through the 911 system, but as Sandra stated, a lot of those are planned or scheduled interventions with the patient.
So, and also on that behavioral health, are we having either police or fire has interaction first and they make the call of whether it needs to go, or is it the 911 operator?
Do you want to answer that?
Sure. So the majority of those calls, PD will respond first, or fire, either or together. And then once they're on scene, they will probably special request us to join the call.
But we're seeing more and more where the PD and just the crisis response team, community response team, are responding together. So we're not always including a fire asset on those calls. As we're growing, we're learning how the system best works, and those calls certainly work out really well as well. So,
Do you think there's opportunity then that maybe the crisis folks, we just go straight there rather than using up an asset because we feel there's not a true emergency at hand?
yes, yeah, I think there's definitely places we can expand our knowledge and understanding the call. Certainly when there's an instance where there's a question of whether something could get out of hand, might be some violence. We always want our officers to go in first and just make sure that that scene is okay for our first responders to be able to work in. So, I think the more information that the call takers can gather, I think the better we can triage and what asset we send to those calls.
And good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stipp?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Chief. the first thing that struck me through this whole presentation was what you're responding to. And then my immediate thought is, who's taking care of you guys? You know, what I wrote is, who's supporting you? So you're out supporting everybody through all these things. How are you, the two of you, keeping your wits about you?
So, I mean, there's so many conversations we have right after where my partner and I are talking about the call, but if there is a situation where either of us felt like it affected us differently, we have resources available to the department. Dr. Glenn, she's available to us. Our
Peer support team.
Our peer support team, thanks, I was going to call them crisis. Our peer support team has also reached out to us after they find out we were on scene of an infant death or, you know, something high stress. They'll reach out and they'll tell us that they're available for us if we need it. So thankfully we have a lot of support. During my meetings with Chief, I also will talk to him about calls that we've been on, and we talk about what went well, what didn't. So a lot of it is that decompression and not keeping that bottled in. We do a good job as a team doing that in the vehicle right after a call, but long term we do have available resources. That's
good. I'm glad to hear that. And, you know, we can't forget about taking care of those that are taking care of us. So that's important. This is a compliment, Chief. You do a really good job of dancing to where we're going. I realize you don't want to ask for anything right now, but really, what does 24-hour coverage look like in the future on this?
Yeah, Sandra and I have been having this conversation for a little while now of, you know, what's the next step for the program? Do we expand into a 16-hour program? Do we expand all the way into a 24-hour program? So we're trying to really look at our data. Jessica Hovland's been doing a great job of assimilating all of our data into one spreadsheet for us. So we're able to see by time of day, day of week, when the calls are coming in and seeing where the biggest impact is. Actually, when we first started the program, we said, okay, Tuesday through Friday is going to be the day. And then they quickly realized we're not doing anything on Fridays. So we switched to Monday. So we're staying pretty adaptable and pretty flexible. We'll continue to watch that over the next few months and really kind of hone in on what's the next step for us. So, you know, we feel like there's going to be a need for it to grow. We're just not sure how fast or in what's the next step for it.
You know, this is kind of the opposite of the discussion that we had regarding the battalion chief, the 2nd battalion chief position. That, you know, the slow growth into this makes some sense, and I think, you know, again, taking care of these responders. So I'm going to look at these two, but taking care of these responders sounds to me, you know, the shorter work days, the time off in between, not getting tied to 48 hours of crisis response and then 4 days off. I mean, I think the work schedule sounds different.
It does.
And I think that part is really important, you know, even for, you know, for everybody to understand how we move forward with that. But clearly the need is there. The one question that I did ask the chief when this presentation came out a few days ago was, are these calls all in Goodyear? And, you know, his answer obviously was yes, which is what he stated tonight. And I think that shows us the need here within our own community. And while we try to be good partners in the system, this is funded solely by Goodyear, solely for Goodyear, and I think we need to continue that philosophy going forward, much like Glendale did. Glendale was the only one
for a long time,
20 years.
Yeah.
And
as you guys had asked last year, we geo-fenced it to Goodyear in Litchfield Park. There have been occasions where our crews have gone into Avondale just over the border, and it's been a need for them to, so they'll go through the battalion and kind of special call the CR. So, but those instances are few. There have been times when they've tried to pull us west into Buckeye, and you know, that's when it's nice to have an experienced provider on there, like Joey saying, no, we're only supposed to be in Goodyear. We're not supposed to go outside of our city. So that geofence is working. The alarm room's been really good about keeping us in our city. So it's something that, we think is really important.
Well, and I think if we, just extrapolate this data and say, our community is not unusual. So if every community up until this point has 500 calls, that means Avondale would have 500, Buckeye would have 500.
It's going to be a really busy unit if, we can
Yeah,
expand
if you
into
open it
the
up. So
system. Yeah.
I appreciate the geofencing part of it. And then my final question is really about, because we're not the only one, is the automatic aid system. The system has got to be measuring these types of calls kind of collectively across the valley. Who's got them, who doesn't have them, what are they doing? Is there a data sharing point that goes with that, or has that not happened yet?
No, that hasn't happened yet. But the nice thing that getting Sandra involved in the CR groups on the west side and then in the automatic aid system as well. So she's frequently meeting with those other teams, trying to figure out what they do, how they do it, but also what the call volumes are like. When we were first starting this, even before we brought Sandra on, one of my first calls was to Chandler Fire because they had a very similar startup like we did. Started at 40 hours and then eventually ramped it up to a 24-hour system. But they almost did an identical number of calls, again, kind of geofence to the city of Chandler. So it was nice to see that we were on the right path. But I think that's a good question about is the ability for us to probably share data amongst the other systems. So I think that's an opportunity for us.
Well, to Councilmember Bray's point about, the going on, a dispatch alone, kind of, that's a future endeavor. We get out there and that's, in order to get to that point, we really need to, I think, look at it as a holistic system and understand, where things are at. This is a great first step. I think that is wonderful. And I wasn't the first flag waver of the program, but certainly the data and whatnot brings forward where we're at with that. And Sandra's got a great reputation in the valley on that, and while I was surprised, I wasn't surprised that Joe Hernandez was the other individual on here. Joe is the only I got to say this. Joe is the only person almost on the planet that was able to be told my mother's age when she needed help. She thought her age or her birth date was a secret from everybody, and we all knew it. But when she needed to tell her date of birth, the only person she would give it to was Joe, under the guise of secrecy, that he not share it with anybody else in the family. So if anyone belongs on the crisis unit, it's certainly Joe Hernandez. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Councilmember.
Well, thank you very much, Joey and Sandra and Chief. This is a wonderful program. I was one of the early flag wavers. I think this is a great program. I think it helps people in our city. The data speaks for it, and I had the opportunity years ago to work with the programs with Phoenix and domestic violence victims. So they they help people. I like the fact it's geofenced. I think that's a good idea. I also, my question was the ramp up. What are we going to look to ramp it up? Because clearly this is something that is going to definitely be needed to take those extra hours and then make sure that we have the people. I think Councilmember Stitt brought up a great point, taking care of the people that are taken care of, because it's tough. What you're doing is really hard work because you're with the people who are in their crisis. And I would like to see more data on what our plan is, like how to cover the city 24. Is it going to be another unit? Is it sometimes 2 units will be on, sometimes 1 unit will be on? How we make sure that you guys can take time off and, aren't eating, living, and breathing this. I'm really also very interested in the whole behavioral health and the mental health aspect that you guys have been doing. I would like to as you get the stats, get more on that too, because I think that's very important right now with all the mental health issues, to know, how we need to continue to work in that area. And the other area is, as you get more information with how you work with PD and victims in cases and everything, I think this is a great piece, and that might be another reason to ramp it up as we ramp it up to make sure that we have people there, because this is one issue that, just nationwide, they've been talking about. Our police officers should not be mental health advocates and people working with mental health, and I think this is that missing piece to make sure, like you said, the individual who's trying to commit suicide, that you had the resources there. You guys had those resources for them to help them, and, hopefully not make it a law enforcement, but a mental health issue, and get them the resources. So I think that is just a great system. I don't really have any other questions. I'm just very pleased, and I'm very proud of our city for doing this. And I would just like to see how ramping it up looks, what phasing, like when we do the ambulances, what's our phasing with vehicles and staff and what we need, because I think this is a great way, and it keeps our fire trucks, it keeps our police officers on the street doing their job, and it keeps our citizens safe. So thank you all very much. And I think there's a detective back there. Thank you too. I can't see you. You're behind the post. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
I mean, all the same things that the rest of the council members already said. I think it's a great program. I think it's very needed in the community, and the results speak for themselves in helping people on a very tangible way. So I appreciate all the work. I'm looking forward to how the program would roll out, how just the mechanics of that, the costs, and all those kind of things also, and then. I'm glad you guys are going to take care of as well. My wife's used to be a hospice social worker, so having to deal with that every day and what that looks like, I'm glad that you guys have that in your wheelhouse to be able to lean on as well, because it does take its toll after a while. But I'm excited for the results here. I appreciate all the data that you really gather to show as well. And I'm looking forward to more data and maybe expansion of the program in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell.
Well, I was one of the original flag wavers, Councilmember Stipp. I have wanted this crisis response team for the last 15 years and have spoken time and time again in favor of it, simply because my neighbor committed suicide years ago, and I tried to minister to the family, and I was very inadequate. But the city that we lived in, which was Sacramento, had a crisis response team, and I actually saw them in action and saw what they could do. And I know that we have all of those similar type cases here in our city, and we need a way to respond to them. I do agree that you want police generally first on scene just to secure it and to make sure that it is safe for our crisis response team to enter, because their safety is just as important as taking care of the patient. I love that you said Glendale was only staying in Glendale. So does that mean if they need our help, we don't go? Or what? How are we going to handle that? Who knows?
Who knows?
Yes, right. Because you said that they were trying to keep us within Goodyear and Litchfield Park, since that's really our area that we are serving.
Correct.
I'm assuming, because you just partially answered it, that you are keeping all of your data so that we'll know when there's a second response team needed, or if we need to expand these hours, because I honestly, with the way our city is growing, I see the need almost already for a second team, because we're so spread out. And as you said, they spend approximately an hour, hour and a half on each call. But if we have an additional call, then we're calling in a unit from Surprise or Glendale.
Correct.
And my contention all along forever has been our fire provides health services and medical services, and the crisis response team is just an extension of that, so that the residents know we're taking care of all of their medical needs.
Yes.
So thank you for all you do. Welcome aboard. We're happy you're here. I love to see the truck or the car, or whatever, the van, whatever it is. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kano.
I had the opportunity to chat with Sandra and Joe at the Coffee with a Cop last week and personally thank them for their work. I'm so appreciative that we did initiate this program. I think it's one of the most proactive things we've done that supports our first responders as well as the community. And I would like to have maybe a little bit more of an elaboration of behavioral health. I mean, that's so much in the news all the time. I don't know if people have an understanding what that is. It might be like smart city, might mean 1,000 different things to a lot of people. So could you just briefly elaborate on what behavioral health is in terms of the work you do?
Sure. Would you like to know the types of nature calls they are? Okay, so because this pie chart looked really crazy before because of all the different calls, we put together all of the calls that would be categorized as behavioral health. And those would include cutting calls, suicidal ideation or suicidal attempts, like I mentioned, anybody that is experiencing anxiety, they're actively saying that they have a diagnosis and they need to check themselves into a hospital. So behavioral health calls could include all of that. Sometimes we will be dispatched to a call that is completely difficulty breathing, and it ends up being an anxiety attack. So the calls may come in as difficulty breathing, but at the end of the day, we figured out that they're experiencing a behavioral health situation. What we would do on scene is try to de-escalate the situation, prevent them from going to the emergency room because that's not the appropriate resource. We will either try to have a family member transport them to the appropriate behavioral health hospital, or if there's no other way, we are able to transport as well. We did receive several calls of the high school students experiencing behavioral health situations where they're either having suicidal ideation or they've disclosed to having suicidal ideation within that week. And I've had, Desert Edge school counselor call me and ask me, hey, is this something that you can help out with? And we have to have PD involved and fire, but those are the types of situations where they're happening, right? And so that falls under behavioral health as well.
Wonderful. Well, that definitely speaks to the value of this program and the need to ensure that we're able in time and after appropriate evaluation, expand it. We recently, let me start again. In the staff report, it talked about you got some donations from a church and some local fast food restaurants. And it just made me wonder about the resources that are available to you. We recently had the community funding subcommittee, and I don't know that maybe if any of your resources were aware of grant opportunities for the city, or if there's needs out there that you have that aren't being met, and if the city can help in any way.
I think one of Sandra's expertise is grant writing. So we got very fortunate to find a unicorn out there. But we're constantly looking at different grant opportunities that are out there and seeing how they can kind of fit into the program. We've been very fortunate that the way the program was budgeted, it did allow us to get a lot of the pieces of equipment that we needed to get them started and keep them going. And then obviously, as you stated, Councilmember Cano, the donations that came from the community it's really been awesome. I think especially Palm Valley Church has been a huge supporter of ours already. So we'll continue to kind of build those partnerships in the community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's not much to add as they come around here to the end, but again, I think it's a great program. Looking forward to your future stats because it looks like we still have a lot of people to serve out there.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see the new numbers when they come in and see what it takes to make sure we're within the geofencing, but taking care of our residents out there. So with that, I appreciate the presentation and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our second item for discussion is the Maricopa County redistricting. Now, the reason why I added this is I felt it was just, a good thing from a transparency for you to see what's kind of going on out there and to see what options you may have if you have some choice of what individually you would like to do. So I asked Gina to get these different options out there. And again, it's going to be up to you individually to decide on how you're might want to approach the specific districts, but it's more for information. And with that, go ahead and take it away, Jenna.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Jenna Carrico, Government Relations Manager. Thank you for allowing me to present tonight on Maricopa County's redistricting of their 5 supervisor districts. Similar to the state's efforts late last year, the county is required to redistrict following every decennial census. And due to the delay in the census data, the legislature extended the county deadline to July 1st of this year to give more time to finalize their maps. To that end, the county has 5 proposed maps that are at your place, and thanks to Mary Manning, will be shown on a PowerPoint because Elmo is acting up tonight. I also want to give a huge shout out to Matt Carroll on our GIS team for quickly analyzing each map and overlaying our city boundary in black to more easily demonstrate how each proposal will impact us. The county is seeking public feedback on these maps before their July 1 deadline, including a public meeting on June 20th. So on the screen and at your place, you will see our current district. The West Valley as a whole is divided into District 4 and 5, represented by Clint Hickman and Steve Gallardo, respectively. Goodyear is currently encompassed within both districts. This is our current map, as I said, and this will remain our map until the current redistricting effort takes effect in 2024. From east to west, the district splits at the I-10, going south on Bullard, and tearing down to our border with Buckeye. Map 1 and Map 2 in your packet are identical to our current status quo for the city of Goodyear. I can leave them on the screen briefly to analyze, but they would be exactly the same for us within our borders. So map 1 and 2 are status quo for us. So they're split exactly the way they currently are between District 4 and 5 on the same line throughout our city. Option 3 divides the city at I-10 with District 4 to the north and District 5 to the south, with a slight deviation north of the I-10 and west of the Loop 303, dividing us at McDowell. And then going on to maps 4 and 5, which are also the same when we're looking at Goodyear's borders. They have a slight tweak from map 3 in that it splits us entirely on McDowell north of I-10. I also have here the criteria that Maricopa County is required to abide by when redistricting and developing these maps, very similar to what we saw the IRC use a couple months ago. And on the next page where the public hearing will be on the 20th, and I just received an email from Gallardo's office that he'll also be holding District 5 public meetings on the 13th and 14th. I'm happy to get that information out to you as well. So all of this information, public comments, and any additional information can be found at the website listed there. I'm happy to go back or answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and, anybody, any questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Stipp.
So draft plan 1 and draft plan 2 are different in no way.
Mayor and Councilmember Stipp, for the city of Goodyear, correct, but there are other changes within both of those districts along other lines, but we've zoomed in just on our city's boundaries.
So they're different to the east.
Correct.
Okay. So we've been represented by two districts all along anyway, right?
That is correct.
And has that created any issues for us?
Mayor, Councilmember Stipp, not that I'm aware
of. You know, I know we had a lot of heartache when LD4 consumed part of Goodyear, and it was a very small little portion. But I also recall that since that occurred, we have actually benefited quite a bit by having different representation. Even when they were in different parties, we still benefited from that. And we're not looking to do a formal council action.
No.
tonight, well, obviously not tonight, it's a work session, but
Excuse me, all I was looking for is just give you all information if you so choose to go to the public hearing and state your views individually. That's what this is all about. Tell you what information's there, how you could go about doing that.
got it.
Okay, but no, not a consolidated council view. We're not looking for that, no.
Well, then, thank you for the information.
Councilmember Ray? No? Mortano? Go ahead.
As Councilmember Stipp said, we've been divided before, and they're very, very similar. It looks like one takes more of Estrella. I mean, so it's pretty similar to what we have now. And there's not one on the table that says keep all of Goodyear together. I mean, that's just not an option.
Mayor and Councilmember Lortano, no.
Okay, yeah, because I know some people have asked for that before, and like Councilmember Stipp said, I don't think we've had any negative. Actually, we had two different groups of people for the legislature to go to, so I don't think we've had any problems. So just keep us informed.
Will do.
Councilmember Kano?
Well, I think the county, we became aware of what a lot of the county does during COVID when they made their public health mandate, because that's the function they provide, and that was a county-issued directive. But in our day-to-day life, what kinds of things are they mandating, legislating? What's their impact on us?
Mayor and Councilmember Kano, I think our primary impact in dealing with the county would have to do with elections and our contract with them to do our elections. Other than that, on the legislative side of things, I think as of late, they try to stay away from there as much as possible.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Councilmember Campbell?
Well, you can't do anything after the lines are drawn, even if you say no. And yes, we were divided into two districts, but I go to Estrella a lot, and they're not happy in two districts, some of the folks up there. They want to be one whole Goodyear. And that's why I keep coming back and saying it's so hard for us to tell everyone we're one Goodyear when we're splitting our LDs and we're splitting now supervisor district, even though they were split. But you wouldn't hear them complaining. Gina, they don't even know how to get a hold of you, and they don't probably even know you're here. They just complain, at a meeting and say, we don't understand what the supervisors are doing. And you're right, with COVID, it was a real heartburn for all of us because they shut our library down, didn't want them to open up, and that really hurt our city. So we can't do anything about it. I sent my little comments in, and that's about it. And I think about 50 or 60 in Estrella are doing the same thing. But they probably aren't going to change it because they don't want to. But if we incorporate more of Rainbow Valley, we're going to be bigger. So maybe we'll have a better presence in District 5 because what little is there, you don't have a lot to say. I mean, you don't. Power is numbers. And if you're not big enough, they're not going to really listen to you anyway. So, but thanks for putting this on, because I think we're like the 5th or 6th city that has done this because they're all talking about it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thanks for putting it on. I actually saw it in the Arizona Republic, so I put my comment in there in the public comment section already. To the website. I was looking through all of them, and then I saw your email that it was going to happen. So I just looked at everything already. So to see what the change even was. So yeah, so it looks like the first two are pretty much status quo for us. I would like to Councilmember Campbell's point. It'd be great to have everything consolidated into one all of our city, but it looks like it probably won't go that route. But I prefer that. But I appreciate the work session and Jenna and putting it together. Thank you.
Again, I appreciate the presentation, but I can tell you from my experience, I've been down at the legislature. There's a couple things going on down there that, to be honest with you, I've been hoping that the residential rental tax, and a couple of the other issues down there. And My take has been the fact that I have more legislators to sell my point, to try to convince them that, city self-determination is very, very important, and that we should have the right for self-determination down there, and convincing them why, and why it's important, especially when it comes to our revenue base and what pays for what. I think it's been beneficial because everybody I've talked to, I believe, has gotten that point across, and I'm hoping we're going to get the results we want very shortly. So my perspective, and I can appreciate all-in-one, but I can tell you, the more that I've had to go to argue the point for the city's benefit, I have found to be beneficial as I've been working down there at the legislature. So with that, thank you for the presentation. And again, I get the feel here that everybody has liked the fact that we did the presentation. So with that, that's it for here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does the council have any comments, commendations, or reports on current events or requests for future items? Go ahead.
Just that I did that MAG Economic Development Trade Mission. So it was a good event, a good thing to go across the border and just talk about trade with Mexico and Hermosillo and the state of Sonora and how that impacts Arizona and the West Valley with jobs, transportation, economic development, water, all those different facets that how important of a trade partner Mexico is, and for tourism as well. So it was a good trip. So thanks. That's about it.
Does the city manager have anything to report? With that, our next meeting will be a special meeting followed by a CFD and a regular meeting on June 27th, beginning at 5 p.m. No further business. This meeting is adjourned.